Okay, so should be live. Hello, and welcome to Epistemological Pollution. And it's just me going solo here, at least for a bit. I'm going to get maybe some people to join me after I rant for a bit. And because even though I'm here talking to myself alone in my work shed, which is odd, although I've done it before. Who the fuck am I kidding? I can bullshit all day at this kind of crap. But it is kind of odd compared to talking to other people. But I feel I should get used to it. There's many a time I just want to discuss something particular to me like this, a topic that springs into my head that maybe others don't have a lot to say about anyways, or is only capturing my interest at the moment. And I don't always want to rely on guests one way or another, of different opinions that may not be suited to every topic. So this topic is kind of a strange one. Just that it's such a catchy and unusual and excellent term. And I've only just come to realize it wasn't being used. I heard it originally from Joseph Jordan recently. And the way he posited it in his argument, I don't remember exactly what he was talking about. But I researched it since and realized it's really kind of an origin, kind of a bullshitty system term as to scientifically explain fake news and basically uncredentialed attitudes they don't like. So the way I heard it through Joseph Jordan, and the way I like to think of it, and the way I'm going to retool it and repurpose it to mean not just for me, but for anybody, is something else than its origin concept. So let me get to the origin concept of this term. Epistemological. Obviously, we're talking about sort of the ideas behind things, the epistemology behind your concepts. So in the origin of it, let's start with that. Because I actually took a clip of all the stuff I found on Google was typical system jargon and talk by people with very dubious family names and very typical things. And it was obviously in origin just a kind of scientific attack concept, a new buzzword, but it applies to something very specific now, especially on social media, which is what I want to get into after. But let me just describe it as they describe it. So let's see here. The argument for thinking that individual cognition is highly unreliable. So that's fine. That's sort of a Platonic relativist argument. Applies to all of philosophy and everything else. Then they go on. It argues that we live in a epistemically polluted environment, deliberately and inadvertently. Other agents, and by the way, the term epistemologically is how I put it. I like actually the longer term. It's catchier. It's so difficult to say. Probably you could just say epistemal. I don't know. Whatever. It doesn't matter. Deliberately and polluted environment, deliberately and inadvertently. Other agents shape our environment in ways that leave individual cognition even worse off than it might have been. We hope to sketch out some of the pollutants and how they work to undermine virtuous cognition. As in virtue signaling cognition? I don't know. It argues. See this now. I want to compare when this is done. Their argument as to what and how this should be versus what I thought it was and what I think it should be and what I will make it be. And who's on the side of virtue for real. It argues virtuous cognition. It argues we live in an environment in which the cues we rely on for assessing the expertise of individuals and the reliability of information are deliberately mimicked by people who seek to deceive us. Because we're unable to assess a great many claims of our own, we're reliant on these cues. Their pollution ensures that individual cognition is even worse off than it might have been. And we finish with some of the negative suggestions for cleaning up the epistemological environment. So any of these you read, the origin of this term, the people who fausted it out on us, it all relates back basically to fake news and to them trying to control people's attitudes through essentially credentialism, which they love. This particular clip I got carries on to say basically you shouldn't trust anybody who doesn't have a PhD and who's talking about anything, which is, was at one time a sound argument, still is in some avenues of life. Say if you want a scientist or a doctor and so forth, you do still want some sort of system of peer-reviewed, rational credentialism. You still need it for some things, for certain. But obviously they've used credentialism and this thing of PhDs, which have become, certainly social science PhDs have become pretty much meaningless. And obviously this has been a system trick to foist on everybody that you must listen to a credentialed journalist over a citizen journalist, or you kind of believe what anybody says if it's not sort of system approved. And this is kind of a tool they've used. So that's the origin of it. Epistemological pollution. But what I assumed it meant, and what I want it to mean, and I'm going to make it mean, is more in line with, say, on the internet, particularly social media, when you have an idea, you have a post, let's say, and you've got a concept you want to speak about, and it is you make a post or whatever it is, and then it becomes polluted, say, by the comments or people sharing it with comments. Not just necessarily that they're negative, it's just that either deliberately, the deliberate ones are the ones I'm more focused on, but sort of indeliberately as well, and deliberately, people leave comments and sort of muddle your argument, confuse it, either not get it or intentionally try to move it off in another way. So that kind of obfuscation, that kind of confusion, I think of, and what I want this term to apply this term to, which is, in my case at least, I'm accepting and in full knowledge of the fact that I'm making an opinion, and I want a purity of my own opinion in my own statements without getting muddled and confused and hijacked. I wouldn't dare to make, even when I know and feel I'm making a virtuous argument, I wouldn't dare, as this person is, suggest to just outright say, oh, we must know, we must follow, what does he say? Virtuous cognition. Virtuous by whose standards, first of all? Everyone, this lack of understanding of the relative nature of the value system and religious upbringing and the different views on what is virtuous held by different people, not just individuals, but different groups and different backgrounds. So that's, I would not dare to assume to say such a thing. I would only ever say that I just want a purity of my own opinion without it being hijacked and muddled. So I do think in that sense that I do have a virtuous high ground over this guy and the people that originated this term, epistemological pollution, which was just a fancy, and I can tell they use it. They like words like this, just like the modern art, just like the Greenberg art speak, where you've got a $5 word, basically. It sounds nice and fancy. Even to say it is difficult. So a normal who is just there to sort of class signal his intelligence and without understanding the deeper concepts, just superficially, as they do, since they're basically sort of psychopaths, which maybe I'll talk about more in a bit. To them, they just hear the fancy word. They think, this is an excellent chance for me to sound intellectual. I'm going to use this. It sort of catches on fire for that sense, for that silly, stupid as that sounds. This is part of the trick of the buzzwording that goes on in the West to destroy and tear things apart. $5 word also has epistemological pollution. It's imbued with a sense of virtue, sort of a harsh and extreme use of the word pollution, as in you're dealing with something vile and evil, and you must have the credentialed opinion, basically, is what they wanted it to mean and to say. So, and I find that to be very typical and not surprising, and not the best use of this term they've come up with, which, as I said, I think is better used to, at least without trying to sound like you've cornered the market on virtue, just to purely express your own opinion. And this is something I've encountered a lot lately on the social media, is people that not always intentionally, I'll talk about the unintentional ones first of all, that don't understand. Even just today I had one, although this is a minor example. It's recent, so I could bring it up. I made what I thought was a straightforward enough comment. And I can understand people not agreeing, but it made a bunch of people angry. I said that the forests of Europe are way more romantic or something than the forests of North America. And, I didn't say anything more than that. I thought it would be it was just like a notion that popped in my head, I think, right before I was driving off in the car, and I didn't think anything of it. And there's all these mad people saying, no, what are you talking? You're so ignorant. How could you say this? And, that's fine. But they didn't, most of them did not understand either the innocence of my original intent, or I think they're mostly Americans that just don't like the idea of it, that probably have not experienced the forests of Europe, because they really are magical, is the word I use. They are a good bit more magical. And there's no doubt in my mind, as someone who grew up in the Rockies in BC, and like, I do love the nature and the woods of BC, of North America. I love them. I grew up in them, and they are wilder, and there's good things about them. But just the word I used was magical, just in terms of sort of a fairy magic, an ethereal quality. The forests of Europe have it up on them for sure, I think. And this was misunderstood, and it's not a big deal. Like, this isn't like I said, a great example, but it is an example of the sort of the pollution of because it was, even though I think a lot of people, maybe most, understood what I meant, there was a lot of angry comments. And this is how social media works, and that's fine. So that would be a good example of the accidental pollution, where they sort of misunderstand, or they just totally disagree, and they take an innocent thing and make it into an angry argument or whatever. So that's not a great example. What is a better example of social media epistemological pollution are people that intentionally divert and intentionally make comments. And I know they do, and everybody probably knows they do. Certain groups, either to steal the idea themselves, which is one thing, or because they represent some other faction, say of the system, or some other group that is at odds with your idea. And they intentionally create an aura through commenting, and that of directing it in a way you did not intend. And again, this is sort of just a social thing that happens. But it really is the term, there must be, now to have a term, epistemological pollution, to say when people are doing this is great. And to use it for those type of people specifically, I think is a great idea, because it implies, it's got a full loaded package of implication in that $5 word buzzwording thing that is so catchy. Maybe it's almost too much. It's almost too hard to say, but those people, and they know who they are. They don't just do it to, they're either there to steal, lift your ideas, or move them into their group and keep them walled off in their specific area. Or they're there to do it to sound friendly, and even as though they're encouraging, but to actually confuse and tear down your idea. So usually, and if you leave them long enough, they'll come back and back every time you revisit that idea. I usually find the same characters only appear on posts about certain things. And again, some are intentional, some are unintentional. It can be hard to tell the difference, because there's many, but there's definitely many people working, especially on Twitter, who, because the thing about Twitter is when someone makes a tweet, you can't delete it, so it's there. Even you can just block them. So the pollution stays on it once they've done it, let's say, which is not something you can, in a Facebook and a Telegram and others, you can actually delete the comment, which certainly helps in terms of keeping your individual ideas pure and of your own mind and the way you intended them to be held. Another example is, I did a video once with this girl. I think girls can be worse for this, to be honest. They get an aura or feeling of I did this video, and someone made a comment negative towards her because she was some kind of fucking Muslim or something. And some Muslim guy came on saying, "Oh, why is she doing out of her hijab?" or something stupid like this. And then she got all like this feeling about me and was giving out at me like, "Oh, this is your audience, this is, your type of thing," or whatever. And I was like, I've never seen this guy before. I don't know anything. If anything, he's from your audience. I mean, I don't know this random Muslim guy. I don't have like tons of followers like this. But, still in her mind immediately was this idea that and I'm sure everyone has experienced this, where they've said something, made a post, and then it becomes insinuated in another direction from other people's comments that are nothing to do with your sentiment, that are sort of, that play off it and direct it in a more sinister or outrageous way than you would have said. And that implication sticks to it. First, not for everybody, for those that but there's a lot of people that cannot discern that you are not the commenter, or you not necessarily associated with them. They think, oh, this crowd is insane. I can't listen to this. Again, this is the superficial workings of the normal and their bizarre psychology. The people that comprise most of humanity that are possibly, according to me, something more like psychopaths, where they're like not there. If you examine them, everything they do is social based and sort of emotional and superficial. They don't investigate what's behind things. They just have the outward impression of things and an emotional reaction to things, which is why things like humor work on them well, as opposed to ranting long philosophical tractates. You're right. Simple, like a bit of sexy things and humor or whatever, kind of base urges and emotions motivate them. So how was I describing this recently to explain their attitude? You could, it's sort of like, and this is most people, again, you could have someone arrive and give a speech in public, and it's literally like, Socrates himself, or like who, I don't know, some like incredible famous orator of like unquestioned value. And to a normal, the main consideration would be how he was dressed or something. If he wore something that was unusual or didn't fit in with what they expected, he'd be in the bad books. He'd be out, and they wouldn't listen to a single word of it. And it doesn't make a difference with them. So extremely superficial. And then some of them can be smart and still this way. They work on superficial social cues, it seems. So I don't think there's a lot behind them in a lot of ways. Same way that psychopaths can be intelligent and seemingly normal people. Really, it turns out, beneath it all, they're faking their way through at a certain level. And so I don't know how many people are like this, but it's really a bizarre phenomenon that only I seem to be interested in. Once again, though, I'm expressing a pure individual idea. But here, no one can muddle it unless you go into the comments later and try to fuck it up. But you can't on my video. No, you can't. Not at least as I'm recording it. Maybe when I invite someone on later, they'll totally confuse it and talk it up. Which I might do soon, actually. 10 minutes. I'll go another 10 minutes here. What else did I want to say about it? So, some of the arguments where these epistemological pollution has really done a number on people and things. Now, this goes back to what its origin again. Its original intent as a buzzword, which is really just, again, opinion, which they don't even consider themselves, as they use virtuous cognition and peer and credentialism. But things like arguments about the Twin Towers collapse and moon landing deniers that I'm always warring with, I think that's really gotten outrageously bad. Like, so many, I'm sure many of my followers don't think it happened. I don't agree. I believe it's very obvious that it happened. And I've never seen a shred of evidence that was remotely convincing to me that it didn't happen at all. And over the years, I watched that crowd grow. That's like real epistemological pollution at work there, I think, and that their arguments were allowed to grow and flourish, and it really was reactive, and it really worked on a lot of people. But it all started with kind of like nasty, snarky, shitposty people that can't believe these things. There's a lot of people that can't even conceive of space, that they don't know. They put it out of their minds. They can't think about it or something, and they don't like the stuff. And then beyond that, it's not like the next step or anything, but they start with the moon landing deniers, and then a healthy chunk of them went on to be these fucking flat Earth people, which I won't even, the moon landing deniers. I don't want to argue. I don't want to insult you or fight with you. I do not agree. But flat Earth people, you can fuck off. Like, that is fucking stupid. Was there a particular incident that led you to talk about epistemological pollution technique? Just me hearing the word and hearing it referenced as Yes, the sort of muddying and sullying of a pure idea that you had yourself, even though, as I said, it has an original meaning, which is just another system buzzword for you must trust credentialed journalists or whatever. Again, they don't, like, stepping over all the problems of relativism that philosophers have agonized over since philosophy was invented, to just say if someone has a PhD, that's it, they're the expert. But no, as far as I just came across it as watching another video of someone else, and I thought, what an excellent term. But if you mean what specifically, like some of the stuff recently with, say, certain groups on Twitter being revealed to be not what they were presenting themselves to be, let's say, I don't want to get too much into that, but I did notice, let's say, they would pollute your idea with their own stuff, whereas they would divert a bit and confuse it. Mostly they would just advertise themselves and their own version of this idea, and then you'd hear them parroting that idea later in their own way, in their own little circle. Well, not a large circle, to be honest. So you might know what I'm talking about, or who. I don't know if I want to get into that too much, but yeah, people. And so people, I think that's people who turn out to not be pretending to be something, and they're actually the opposite. They're not that at all. Is very suspicious, as in that is an intentional epistemological pollution project to sort of control ideas, social media ideas, in its own kind of environment and bubble, and wall it off. And yes, your next comment, yes, it does maybe sound like that. Yes. Yes, but there's others that are like that as well. Yeah. But that would be that would come to mind, but they would be more just advertising their own shit all the time. They still do. Every time you make it, it's like, oh, this is like, they always re-reference their own little scene, which, again, generally speaking, there's nothing in that they didn't sort of lift from somewhere else, that didn't hear somewhere else originally, usually better, but they just they must make their own version of everything. That makes them very suspicious to me anyways. But so that made me think of it as well. But even just in general, not just because they're just sort of advertise their own thing, that's not quite the same as there's others that are obviously active agents of an even more sinister kind, like actual literally agents that want to disrupt a tweet, if you can believe. Apparently, from what it's hard to believe, but they put enormous effort into things like this, into controlling and stopping certain tweets from going viral and affecting and ideas reaching a lot of people. This is why I think actually social media should have a different word to describe it, because that's just so it sounds so friendly and gay. Social media, and which is perfect then for a normal perfect buzzword, but really it should have a secret word, a second word, like gods used to have, which had a deeper meaning, which is, I don't know what we would call it, but for what it really is, like even something like Facebook, let alone Twitter and some of the other ones, it's like a worldwide matrix of ideas and opinions, sort of battling it out to like slice like a thrown spearhead through like a crowd and like influence all these people in a certain direction. It's like watching cells at war under a microscope, and like one just sort of takes over, and like and those are ideas. It's not people specifically, it's ideas, personalities and ideas. So what it should be called is like, I don't know, the opinion matrix war, or something, like something a bit more romantic and momentous than fucking social media. It's like, as though it's all just about, hey, hi grandma. Maybe it was originally, but it's not about that now. Stryker was just discussing this form of pollution. Yeah, maybe you just joined me. I actually mentioned that. That's where I heard it. Yeah, and I got it from him. Yeah, but again, so if you didn't hear me at the start, like, so I got the idea and I thought that's perfect. That perfectly describes what I'm talking about now. But when I researched what it was meant to be, what the system invented it to use it as, it's completely an attack buzzword used to excuse credentialism and just say that your opinion is garbage and you can't Where did I get that from? Hold on, maybe I still have it here. I can quote from a bit more. It was pretty funny, actually, how bad it was. Where I got the where is it? Let's see here. From Oxford Academic or something. Let's see. This focus is on the so-called novice expert problem, the problem of identifying a genuine or reliable expert among those taking conflicting stances on an issue within the sphere of apparent expertise. So, and as I said at first, it's like that's fine if we're talking about like medicine and rocket science or something, but this is like credentialism as it applies to political ideas, obviously, and to you cannot trust someone who's not credentialed, who is giving an opinion on the internet. Solving this problem is essential for lay people if they are to be able to come to justified views, he says, on many important issues. This language is so tricky and so authoritarian in its way. And this is not what I will use this term for. And it will no longer mean this, because to them, it's just another throwaway word for something they do all the time, which they have many words for. I think, as I understood it from Joseph, and the way I will continue to use it, is in this term of social media muddying and confusion, of particularly through comments and shares, and taking an original idea and steering it their way, either out of all the different motives that they have, I guess, generally bad ones, because it's certainly easy enough to leave someone with a pure idea, and you have to fight then. You have to fight and comment on every single one just to like gain back what your original simple sentiment. And there's people that just get confused, obviously. But either way, whether it's inadvertent or intentional, I will call it epistemological pollution. Let's see here. A number of philosophers have risen to the challenge of identifying criteria that ordinary people might use to distinguish reliable experts from unreliable. This is all that fake news garbage. And fake news, like even the word, the term fake news, another one of theirs. They love this, fake news, because it's so just like says it like for a normal who just sees things superficially, understands nothing, only the surface level stuff. It's like, so this news is fake, it's false. I must have the real news. Like only a child could even use that term, because anybody with any sense knows that all news is biased. There's no news free from bias. Maybe in some kind of like, I mean, it'd be very, very hard to get news free from bias. Here we go. Genuine experts have good credentials. Of course they do. They got a PhD in whiteness or something. They have PhDs in the topic under discussion or in a closely related field. They have published peer-reviewed research in the field. Experts with an especially high degree of credibility set the agenda for their field as reflected in their citation count. Whoa. So if you have a lot of citations. So every time I make a tweet now and someone epistemologically pollutes it, I must whip out the fucking citations. I'll use this fucking guy's citation. Incidentally, his name is like, what is it? Neil Levy. So there you go. Charlatans and their fellow travelers employ a variety of tactics to mimic credibility. For instance, those with the interest in deceiving the general public may set up parallel institutions that seem to guarantee expertise. Anyways, that's their bullshit. So fuck that. You can tell it's all bullshit. But I'm talking about just being allowed to express a pure idea. I'm not saying my ideas are the last word in it, that I have cornered the market in truth, absolute truth. I know that's a very difficult thing to do. I just want to be able to express my own opinion without it being hijacked by somebody else. What's this? Right on. Look forward to the show. Look forward to what show? This is the show. Oh, I'm going to get some other people on. Actually, I'll do it soon here. Shadowcracy. Fake and gay. Shitocracy. Fake and gay TM. Yeah, fake and gay is the word. Especially, like I said, the very deceptive people that are literally fake and gay. And both those things. It's hard to tell where the fakeness stops and the gayness begins. Let's see here. I'll send the link to a couple people that I know are hanging around, and we'll see what happens, if they want to come on or not, because I won't go for too long. What else did I want to say regarding this? Oh yeah, so yeah, and that also applies to the invention of language. Like, there's the invention of useful language. This is the criteria for which I think when buzzwords enter the sphere, enter the collective consciousness, the criteria for them being genuine. Like, I do everything sort of instinctually, and I'm not always right about everything, but I end up being right about a lot, for fuck's sake. But like, I think if a term enters the sphere of consciousness, it's because it is absolutely necessary and needed. And there's some new thing going on that needs a descriptive word. So let's say common words people we like us may use would be red pilled, or like red pilled meaning someone who is formerly a liberal person being suddenly coming across information that turns them into an esoteric traditionalist crazy person, as happens to so many. And so it's a term describing a function, total utility, and that's fine. But since then, I've noticed people trying to insert made-up words for things that already existed, the meaningless, stupid words, if you ask me. And I see a lot of people using them. I don't mean to insult anybody, but I just think they're using words like Lindy, Kino, and some of these terms. I just think those are fake and gay, and sort of an attempt to epistemologically pollute even just the buzzwordy organic language that was occurring regarding the culture of rebellion against the modern world, the liberal system or whatever. And other words that they come up with, you hear all the time, that are mostly meaningless or trying to distract you or direct you into a polluted, to epistemologically pollute you away from a pure ideas. Words like, even I would say, like longhouse and some of these ones, I really have no time for any of that shit. It's just like, it's unnecessary, not describing anything particularly meaningful, and is distracting. And maybe a lot of that is done on purpose. Whoops. Maybe some by accident. Oh, someone's joining me. Oh, looks like the Presley Benson. Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm doing well.
Good. I was ranting on my own for a while there.
Yeah. Yeah, I was listening.
Oh, were you? Okay, so you know what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
I hope you know. I hope it made sense to everybody.
Yeah.
That's what I mean.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think too. Yeah, you find this even just in, personal conversations with other people, that, no matter what you say, they already have the intention that they're going to twist things around because they don't like you. And they decided that from the get-go. So you could say something, that's brilliant, that's, even in line with their own values, but, somehow, they can twist it around to make it, like it's, wrong or your fault, or, that you're to blame, in some reason. But, but they start talking with other people saying the exact same thing, people that they really like, then they jump on board and they're very supportive of it. So I guess what I'm saying is that it really depends on that person's mood. And even on social media, if somebody's already in a bad mood, well, they're more likely going to try to pick a fight, with you, with, whoever it is, with whatever that they see right at first, like on Twitter. Or if they're in a good mood, they might be a little more, supportive, might say, maybe a good comment or something. But yeah, it's very emotionally based, as what you were saying earlier, that they can't really see past what's right there in front of their noses and how they feel immediately. And then later on, they might say, oh, yeah, I probably overreacted. I'm sorry. But then they'll do the same thing over again. And it's just low intelligence. That's all it really is. They don't take the time to actually deeply understand something. They just react.
Yeah, well, that was more specifically say about the emotional, what's the word again? Inadvertent pollution, no, unintentional epistemological pollution. where, yeah, like you're saying, it's an emotional reaction and they haven't thought it through. Like that post I was saying earlier where about the forests and all this angry reaction, like, oh, you hate America, well, fuck you, or something. I don't know. But it's right. It's just purely emotional thing. And though I have noticed over the years that anybody who does have a bad reaction like that and sort of annoys you and insults you randomly, you're like, what, fucking, like, calm down. If you let them go, generally they come back and do it again, or worse. If you don't
Yeah.
either take them to task or block them, it's been my experience, they get cheeky about it and they just want to do it again. So
Yeah, they're
I don't
just
get
being
that either.
petty, and yeah, they're just being petty, and you know, it what it takes is just completely ignoring them. If at first I'm okay, maybe they might just been in a bad mood. Maybe maybe it might have been a misunderstanding on your own part. But yeah, if it keeps on happening again and again, they're just bored. They want some kind of reaction to start up their day, and it just have to move on from it, and you know that's that.
Someone says it's literal as well as abstract analogy. You mean the term epistemological pollution? The show was good, and also that song. Grassman Reef says, "What do you mean? What show? Were we talking about a show? I don't know.
I
There's no
don't
song in this
know.
show, so we're not talking about this one. Loyalty over ideology. I don't know about that. A guy from V says loyalty over ideology. Loyalty over ideology. I mean, you have to. Ideology is big with me. I'm not an anti-ideology person. Loyalty is also important, yes, but like you can be loyal to mistaken ideology, or
Maybe like it has to make sense. Like one's loyalty, to something has to. I don't know. Like like there has to be some kind of sense to your loyalty, rather than just maybe, um, just agreeing with whatever ideology that it is, even if you don't. I don't know. It's kind of hard to explain. Yeah, guy from V. Yeah, you'll probably have to elaborate more on what you're meaning.
yeah. Well, oh, he says, or he's talking about Tom Petty songs. Oh, that's Grassman Reef, Tom Petty, right? But yeah, loyalty over ideology. I don't know. Yeah, that's a hard one. And
Yeah.
Lindy is fucking stupid. Guy from V says, yeah, I know it's fucking stupid. But that's the other thing I was saying. The criteria of a new word being invented, it must have a utility. If they've just be like, so Lindy's another word for cool or something, basically, right? We already have enough words for that. That's just somebody who can't see that something requires a new term. So that's why epistemological pollution, I think, is a great term for this phenomenon of people intentionally and otherwise sullying your pure idea in social media. It's perfect for it, I think. And like you said, sometimes they just haven't thought it through and they're emotionally reacting. But then there's the other ones that are doing it intentionally, and there's a lot of them as well. And that's something else. I don't know how much
Yeah, and
we can talk about that.
yeah, it's like what Patva is saying right here, and he says, "Jolly Heretic did a good video on midwits today. Never argue with a midwit; it's just a grind." And yeah, that's basically it. You just have to. There comes to a point in a conversation. When you when when if you find yourself having to repeat yourself several times and try to get them, I don't know, back on track to your original thought. If it's more work than it's worth, I guess. Kind of just have to leave it and let them figure it out.
Well, it's hard because some people are intentionally there to fuck you up and fuck you around, and to waste your time, and you will never agree on anything you say. So maybe if you don't, you've had a relatively large account, but like I find once you get into like past, I forget what kind of numbers, when you start to attract those type of things, and you'll find
Yeah,
yourself arguing with people that you cannot, and then you realize, oh, okay, there's nothing I can say because this person is actually intentionally just trying to fuck with me, waste my time, and like,
yeah, yeah. Actually, it was a few years ago. I had a very good example of this with somebody. It was another account. They weren't extremely big, but they were um, a bit bigger than what I was at the time. But anyhow, um, so he comes to me and starts agreeing, with was with some of my opinions. I was saying, I forgot what exactly, and I just started talking. He sounded nice and everything, but then he started to kind of do a 180 and started to like try to make every single thing that I was talking about, opinion or belief, and turning it around and saying, "Oh no, that's not wrong. That's not Dharma aligned," or how can you say this? And I went along with it. And I was explaining it, whatever it was. Like I said, this was years ago, so I can't really remember much about what it was specifically. But there were several points I remember.
Yeah.
And then eventually, this was like a good like hour, 2 hour discussion, but it turned more into a debate. And I called him out on it and said, "Hey, this isn't a proper discussion anymore. This is just you, trying to turn down every single thing I'm talking about. So there is a clear, strong bias here that you have. What are you getting at?" And eventually, he shut it down because he didn't have a proper answer. But there you go.
Okay, so Grassman Reef says the show when I joined was good. Your show, the song you made a few years ago with killer bass was good. Was that the stupid song I made in here where I'm wearing the Prussian helmet? What's it called? I made a little song. It did have good bass. You're right. What the hell was it called? Oh, I can't remember. I can't even remember.
Hello,
Yeah,
good
okay.
afternoon, rather good evening, chat. I hope you're all faring well. I
They
was
are.
invited here to give people a rundown on how, if you allow midwits to make decisions when serious academics and scholars should be making them, you're going to get mid or lower tier output. So if the topic of the stream is, I haven't had a look-see at what has been said prior in the stream. Can you hear me all right, by the way?
Yes, and yes, thanks for coming on. Alexander Sangmore is here.
No worries.
The narrator of the audiobook version of Decline and Fall of Western Art, and he, of course, has opinions on these matters. And yes, so let me run it down for you quickly. Okay, so I came across this term, epistemological pollution, on someone else's stream. I assumed it meant a certain thing that I'm going to make it mean because I want it to mean, which is when you express a pure idea on social media, or I guess anywhere typically, but I mean really social media, and it gets diluted and polluted with comments from other people trying to steer it in their own direction. And your idea gets sort of muddied and confused and buggered up. And sometimes they do it because they're, as Presley said, emotional midwits. And sometimes they do it on purpose, either to sell their own garbage.
Also, narrative causality sculpting.
Exactly. Exactly.
It's very important for the powers that be to hold absolute dominion, authority, power, and influence when it comes to the narrative. And so, if there are cracks in narrative cohesion, they just ensure that their operatives fill them. And what fills those cracks sometimes is predatory, evil, and bullshit. And it is frequently all three simultaneously. They fill in the cracks of what people should be paying attention to with predatory, evil, distraction bullshit, so that the distractions work and are effective, right?
Yes, they are. And it is on purpose. And someone asked me for an example. Who was it? Further up. And I think I already gave you an example that you agreed on, unless you're somebody else. ML Wiz. Can we get a solid example of epistemological pollution from your perspective? Like what the right take is, how it gets polluted, who the actors' influence are. I mean, the right take, I'm not trying to say. The other thing is, and when I looked up, I'll just run over this again quickly. When I looked up the official definition of epistemological pollution, it was invented as a system term, basically in favor of credentialism. It was just a useless buzzword they created to say you can't trust anybody who doesn't have credentials. So it was a bullshit thing. What I assumed it meant is what I'm talking about and what I want it to mean, which is, as I said, the dilution of the pure idea, which is not necessarily the correct idea, just your own idea, not being changed and polluted by somebody else. So as an example, I don't have an example of the right thing to say. I mean, I do, according to me, but that's like a sort of relative opinion. I mean, it's not the point of this. But say an example of something recently, let's say I made a post and somebody came on, I think today or yesterday, I don't know, someone comes on and refers to it. Oh, this is obviously the Longhouse, this and that. and I don't like this term. I'm not even sure. I never knew even what it meant. I know it's a suspect bullshit term, and I don't have time for it. And that may just be my opinion again, also. But either way, he's changed it and made it into this other thing right before my eyes. So that's what I would consider epistemological.
Okay, well,
pollution.
we can offer different definitions when it comes to linguistics, but the actual meaning of the terms is to notice bullshit, right? When it comes to a scholarly or academic field, yes.
Officially in its inception, but it is definitely a system credentialism ruse buzzword bullshitty thing itself, right? It's not. It was invented as a bullshit term, but I'm taking it back. I'm making it into a real term. So I'm in my uncredentialed cowboy way. I want to use it, and I think people have been using it in this way because it can broadly just mean your idea has been muddied and fucked up and hijacked, and that's fine. It's I think to apply it specifically to the social media avenue of things really is quite apt and necessary, because that is what happens so often. How many times have you wanted to express something and it failed, not because even that you said it wrong so much as it was interpreted wrong, mostly, or even interpreted right by many people, but you got so many comments from people that got confused by it and even angered that it kind of like messed it up.
Yeah, I was going to say, actually, I remember one of the big things when back in 2020, I was on Millennial, and I remember one big thing that people were saying was that that they can't believe that I'm was it pro globalism, or it was something like that.
Why? What did you say originally?
Well, I don't think I was saying I was pro globalism. I'm pretty sure, but I do remember a little bit of it, that I was saying that maybe this is a part of the greater cycle. Maybe this is simply a part of nature, part of civilization. Yeah, we have globalism. For no, it wasn't globalism. It was well, kind of like it, I guess. It was the Great Reset. That's what it was. And saying, okay, well, maybe this happens, for a reason, and it's a challenge, and it's something that just makes us stronger. So, but people, they just they hear, oh, Great Reset is a good thing. You must be da 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 da, and it's just those kind of people. It's not that I'm upset by their insults like that. I'm just very much annoyed by how retarded they sound.
Yes, that is annoying. Alexander, what do you think? What's your example? Can you summon an example of this happening to you in your? I mean, you're mostly on Telegram, where it wouldn't be quite so bad, and you're very forceful, and you argue with anybody that disagrees with you.
When it comes to, sorry, what was the question? Pardon, sir.
Do you feel do you understand the concept, and do you feel you've suffered from it, and you have an example?
Yes, certainly. When it comes to epistemological corruption, you can offer the example of paganism used as a term to broadly, how shall I put this, paint everything that is of a ethno-mythopoetic origination as being an outgroup and external. Oh, that's pagan. In brackets, it's not of the Abrahamic tradition and faith, etc., and therefore, oh, it's pagan. So, in terms of linguistics, I believe that epistemological pollution is directly running parallel always to linguistic pollution, and the key example of this can be the term pagan, that is created as a term to vilify, dehumanize, and create what is expected to be an in-group ethno-mythopoetic identity and preference to be considered an outgroup at the prevalence of Christianity being enforced by the sword. So things like the term pagan are a good example in my eyes of epistemological pollution. And you can also cite an example of ChatGPT being, and other AIs being programmed to say what the programmers want them to say instead of actually providing the truth. So that the epistemological pollution of AI is something that the Dilbert comic creator Scott Adams talks about quite a lot. And he basically says that if the programmer of the responses to the prompts is retarded, then the AI itself is going to be retarded as well, right?
Yes. And that is shocking. I mean, the things they do there are very, very dangerous.
I'm having a brief problem with the headphones, by the way, so give me a moment. I need to fix it.
No problem. Yeah, so that is a good assessment. And like in terms of, say, Christians reacting against a pagan type post, or there's a lot of examples of people that should just sort of calm down and don't necessarily need to react angrily to something you've said. Just leave you to it. That's your opinion, kind of thing. And even actually the Longhouse guy, thinking about the Longhouse example.
Also emotional blackmail when it comes to the analysis of history, sir. Sorry for the interjection, but epistemological pollution is immediately noticeable and discernible when, instead of someone taking a clinical approach when it comes to the analysis of historical phenomena, they take one of emotionally blackmailing people of the variety of, oh, our suffering is the greatest, etc., and yours is lesser to our own because we write the history book. So, the general idea is that if there is a degree of predatory emotional blackmail in the history authors, that is a form of epistemological pollution that can be discerned and also pointed out. When you conduct an analysis of history, you cannot do it from an emotional perspective. It needs to be from a clinical and analytical one, right? So anyone who judges history or attempts to paint it in a lens that favors them excessively, that also can be provided as a third example of epistemological pollution in history, in linguistics, and in AI. Other scenarios that I would like to cite for the specific term that you're utilizing, sir. Sorry for the interjection.
No, that's fine. And in regards to history, as I say, written by the victors, is always going to have bias, and anybody who analyzes it will have the bias of where they're coming from. So, but what you have to be able to do is where,
for example, Odysseus had a terrible defeat at the Romans' hands, but was actually very competent at fighting, supposedly, according to the English version of the story. But because the story was written by Roman consuls, I think the term is, it made it out as if she was an incompetent leader.
Yeah. So what you need is to be able to allow for each biased view to combat and battle it out and find a middle ground of agreement of relative truth, because you're never going to have the absolute 100% truth of anything that ever happened.
Also noticing predatory evil bullshit when it's obvious predatory evil bullshit, such as Bayesian anthropology, for example. The idea that there are no significant factors when it comes to I'm not going to go into this, but anyone who knows what Darwinian versus Bayesian anthropology schools is, right, will know that this is also a scenario of epistemological pollution. The idea that, and Carl Jung's tabula rasa, by the way. Carl Jung is a very competent author in terms of psychoanalytics, but when it comes to his assertion that people are tabula rasa, born a clean slate, this is not accurate. The racial genomic profiling of a person directly correlates with...
Presley might have... You're a big Young fan. Well, Presley might argue with you on that one. I don't know. Or does she agree? What do you think? She's a big Young fan. I know that.
I agree. I mean, I haven't read all
Are people
his
born a
works.
clean slate?
I don't think that they are. And I mean, I've read quite a bit of Memory Streams Reflections. I'm currently reading On Man and His Symbols. But yeah, I don't believe that people are born as clean slates. It just, I guess it's more of it intuitively doesn't make sense to me. But that's not to say too, that I don't agree, with a lot of things that they says, because there's quite a bit in his autobiography that I can relate to. And I think too, it's important.
Well, compared to Pardon Freud, who was a cocaine peddling, incest authoring fetishist, Carl Jung is okay in my books, despite disagreeing with him on the tabula rasa matter. But by comparison to what else was on offer, I'll take Mr. Jung's perspectives overall.
I think too that it's going back to academic articles and people who abuse that and take advantage of their credentials. I think that they've gotten the idea of how they use sources. So like the discussion that we're having here, we can talk about things. We can talk about Jung, and we can discuss what we agree with them on, discuss what we do not agree with them on, but we can still see the matter in an objective sort of way. Whereas the problem with a lot of so-called academics or intellectuals, they can't really differentiate that. So in some of their books, they'll or in some of their articles, they'll go the whole way through it, just pouring in all their biases on this matter, and that's not the way that I think science nor philosophy should be conducted. That's the reason why that we have introductions in books, or we have separate things apart from whatever analysis that we have. And this is one thing that I do like about Oswald Spengler. I've read a little bit of his.
Of course, you pronounce it. Of course, you pronounce it in the German.
Oh yes. This is what I do like about his Decline of the West. I haven't read it all the way through, so I'm sure that there's a lot that I don't know. But what I have read, he gives a very unbiased historical analysis, and that's something that I do appreciate. And he doesn't go into we should do this, this side should be more like this, he's not pro winner, not pro loser, or it's just, I think that's what modernity is escaping a lot, because they're just so very emotionally based, emotionally reactive, and expected to come up with a clean cut, concise answer.
Overall, we should collectively develop the skill. Oh, sorry, you broke up a moment and I thought you paused.
Oh yeah. So that's fair. I'm not sure it's like we're talking about people like our present problem, say overall in the West and our various nations, is the fact that we have a small group of elite people controlling a larger group and pitting them against themselves and against their own history. And you can certainly say that's epistemological pollution, but it's even beyond that. It's just outright total truth control.
What is the counter to it, though, is the interesting question, sir.
Well, the counter, it is the interesting question. Well, first of all,
counter to it is noticing patterns of predatory bullshit.
Yes, it is. But this is what this is about, exactly. Patterns of predatory bullshit. Because epistemological pollution, as I want to describe
it, laughing at it, sir.
is more specific than this, though. It's not just every lie.
Getting more incompetent at it, sir. It's easier for the normie to notice their rampant corruption and incompetence, though, sir.
I don't know if it's easy. I wouldn't say that. They still don't notice, as far as I can see. They notice some things, sort of. I don't know that they notice.
They notice a portion of the pattern, and when they notice a piece more of the pattern, it's hilarious to observe them, sir.
It is hilarious. But I still routinely come across somebody who's just like a basic sort of liberal person who still thinks the far right is this dangerous, weird thing they don't understand. It's like, we can't be. But they'll still themselves say something sort of racist and like old school.
That's okay, sir. You can brand them as delusional and move on. As in, do you have the cognitive and emotional resources, right, to allocate to the subsentient. Most of us don't who pay attention to causality pattern analytics and give a shit about serious discernment of patterns instead of subsentient bullshit takes, right?
Okay, but you're not on say
gotten
Twitter,
so
right?
bad that it's easy for the normies even to notice it.
Well, there's some things happening, but even that, it's more that things have leaked into the media that they absorb, that they can see and do. It's some whole other area of things. But what I'm trying to make specifically epistemological pollution about is really the social media phenomenon of, and you'd really have to, it's more like Twitter. I don't think you get it so much on Telegram. I guess anywhere, yeah, that you express an opinion and it gets sort of either intentionally or unintentionally diverted.
Telegram is where bullshit goes to die, sir.
Well, yeah, exactly. Telegram is a bit harder. Twitter is where you really get diverted and you have to battle. You say something, and if it takes off and you want to retain what you really meant, then you have to go into like a war over this fucking tweet. Often. I mean, there's actors that are either confused or trying to divert it their own way, but that's really what I want specifically it to mean. Not just every time you're lied to. That's too broad. There's no need for a word for that.
Anyone who does not have the equivalent competence of an operative is going to just be my fun plaything, sir. You do realize this, right?
Well, operative is the word, because many of them are operatives. That's for sure. As is recently revealed, in fact, by certain people that on the right, you may have had a full trust in, that are perhaps not what they seemed. But I don't want to go into the
impression of being starter zone NPCs.
Not NPCs, but intentional, willful.
Honestly, sir, I think that they just recruit from obedient starter zone NPCs, train them for a few weeks, and then send them in to cause a ruckus. And when that fails, they usually have to pay out a shrink to deal with the emotional damage fallout.
Well, some of these characters are sort of Ivy League American types, and they're doing something of their own. I don't know what they're at. There's also that divide. There's a divide between the European.
They exist for my personal amusement.
What?
You
sound like a Dalek.
A Dalek, yeah. Someone said, "Who is this?"
Well, not exactly, but
narrator Alexander saying
the reality of the matter is that if they cannot entertain me or inform me, I'm going to be bored with them, right? And so that's bad, because the worst thing that people can be is boring, right? And so, when it comes to the liberal psychotics, I'm not saying that I feed on their emotional energy, but I like witnessing their lamentation.
You see them lamenting?
I can see.
Oh, go on, yeah.
Oh, I was just going to say, yeah, I can see how it can be amusing, but there's also a fine line between that, because how I approach it anyhow. It's funny, but I also don't want to
it's a little game where you tell if someone is subsentient or really sentient or not.
Yeah, but at the same time, I have other things too that I want to put my time and my energy towards. So there's people that can be amusing and everything, but if it comes out to be just if they're way too negative, I just turn it off, and go and I put my mind to something else that's more constructive.
Oh, I must wreak a vengeance on them if they're too negative. I must wreak a vengeance if they piss me off. If they're annoying, if they're pissy for no reason, I really get annoyed. I'm like, what? Why are you being pissy with me?
I think the reason why that so-called academics, they get so, emotionally enraged, upset, especially, with other people, who do have, their own opinions and can deliver their opinions in a very intelligent way. Find that to be intimidating. I think it kind of boils down to it's an insecurity, because imagine, these people, they went to school, for, maybe 4-8 years or something.
And I hear your question, by the way.
Well, let me finish what I was saying, just so I don't lose track of it. Just imagine, somebody who goes to university for 8 years or something, And then, to have that dismissed, that would be a big personal blow on themselves. I'm trying to articulate this a little bit better.
Yes, people that go to university sometimes esteem themselves to be intellectually superior when they are just midwit yes men. And so this works only on people that do not have the spinal fortitude to assert you are peddling predatory evil bullshit, and now I'm going to point it out and laugh at you, at your incompetence and corruption, right? So this only works on people that will tolerate their bullshit, right? People that are highly disagreeable and notice patterns, like the me's of the world, it doesn't go down well, because we have a degree of immunity to propaganda, right? And not only that, but we discern the propaganda and then we turn it into training materials for our own. Why? Because it's funny, right? They want to peddle their predatory evil bullshit, but we invert it and turn it against them because it is funny. And that is the answer and solution to the epistemological corruption question. You discern it, you invert it, and then you humiliate it with good and high quality standards of humor and satire. That is my position, at least.
And that was the role of jesters back in the olden days. They were basically comedians for kings, the court jesters. So if the king, for instance, if he had a big problem on his hands and he's trying to really understand it, and he might be looking at it from a very serious approach, well, the court jester would come in and turn it on its head and make it and show him the other side of it, show him the funny side, the light side, and then the king would be like, oh, okay, well, maybe it's nowhere near as bad as I thought it was. So now he has two different sides that he can try to find a good balance between. So having comedy.
Your treasurer has you by the balls, my lord.
The best jesters were trained to fart on command. That was a highly prized jester. He would just fart whenever the king told him start farting, and that was the key to being a jester. Apparently, that was the ultimate. I mean, entirely medieval. They were obsessed with things like this. They were. They had a certain mindset, let's say. A zany, a jester or a zany, which is a hilarious concept. Although, I mean, it's like having
There's also a little point whereby in the archetypes, the jester slays the emperor in the archetypes.
Yes. But in
Odin
terms of
and Loki.
In what?
Odin and Loki.
Oh.
The blood brothers. Very, very different, very, very opposite to each other, but at the same time, one and the same. They're the great paradox. So
that Alexander, that Presley spent some time although were you technically a Hare Krishna? Would you call yourself one? Would you have called yourself one?
Yeah, at the time, for a couple of years, I was for about a year or two. Yeah.
What did your parents think of that? They were like, did you go up?
Just like,
they were okay.
Well, they just thought, oh, well, that's interesting, but they didn't really have too much to say about it. But for about a couple of years, I was a Hare Krishna devotee, and I liked it. Everything I liked what was being taught, but then started to come down to I have very different views to them. They're very much by the
political type views or other views?
Not really political, more so spiritual.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, spiritually different views. They're more so by the book. You must read the Vedas, in order to understand Radha and Krishna. And but I didn't believe that. I believed it's more important to establish a direct communication with them, so in the form of prayers, but not just, prayers, where it's just a one-sided form of communication. You have to listen well as well. And I felt that the other devotees, they didn't really listen to them well. They weren't open to new things, being said. So, to put it simply, yes, you have Vedic scripture, but they were only adhering to just that. They gave no room for new scriptures, or for new thoughts, for new beliefs, for new things that Radha and Krishna are wanting and are saying. Because not everything that they have ever said and will ever say is going to be maintained within a book, or even a series of books, from thousands of years ago, And that was my problem. And I just, it started to become more of a cult than anything.
That I do not trust Indians with my spirituality. May I briefly affirm that I do not trust any Eastern civilization to peddle me their spirituality to me, my family, or my bloodline. Thank you. And Middle Eastern, by the way, not only Asiatic, but also Middle Eastern.
It's the most pure, it's the most intact original. That is the most intact original Aryan religion.
Oh, really?
It is, yes. It's the most intact, unsullied by Christianity, original Aryan religion. Yes, that country was conquered by the same Aryans that conquered Europe, and that's as far as we know, as far as I heard, the ancient version of that is the closest. I mean, we have the paganism.
Came from Thrace, yeah.
We still have our paganism, and I believe Presley now would call herself a pagan in the European sense, right? Am I right, or what? Am I right? What would you call yourself?
I don't know about pagan, because that still is, it still is operating on that same Abrahamic spectrum. That a pagan is anything.
Not exactly. There is the Abrahamic definition of pagan, by the way, and there is the actual definition, which is racial mythopoetic world soul of a civilization peoples. So the negative connotation to the term pagan has been invented by Christians and normalized as a negative thing. Oh, you're a pagan, etc. But the actual definition of it is the racial mythopoetic identity and world soul, right, of a distinct civilization peoples, right? So it depends on the definition that you use for pagan, right? The Christendom-related definition is a considerably negative one. For example, the Greeks used the term barbarian to anyone who was not a Greek citizen and did not believe in their gods, etc., right? And so what was my point? Yes, the example of epistemological pollution in the term epistemological-linguistic pollution of the term pagan, right, is a Christian dogma, and the normal understanding of it is the racial mythopoetic world soul of the peoples, right? So that's the distinction that I would like to ensure is relayed. Okie doke.
Yeah, it means yokel or something, basically. But I like the actual word itself is nice. It's better than heathen. It rolls off the tongue nicely. Pagan. It sounds.
I think, I do see your point, and I guess from that perspective, yes, I would identify myself as pagan, but really, I think that this would be a good case, where a new word invented would really serve its purpose well, just to really draw the line, between, this very European-based spirituality from an insult, from an Abrahamic insult,
Yeah.
I think that would be.
When it comes to spirituality, there's a lot of predatory evil bullshit that abounds. And so I think that whenever conducting any manner of religious studies, you should always keep in your mind what proportion of what I'm reading is predatory evil bullshit being peddled to me to make me weak and submissive, specifically in the case of Christendom. I have many gripes with it overall. For example, I believe that it is a Gentile subjugation and humiliation ritual. The whole idea of turn your other cheek, and do not be vengeful over getting crucified, but forgive them. This is the path to subjugation and humiliation. Okay, so a book that teaches subjugation and humiliation of the non, I don't like it.
It's not just. It's not. I wouldn't say it's just that. And I'm not.
We should be discerning of bullshit, right?
All right. Yes,
that is
it's true.
the prima facie, right?
Right. Yes, but I'm not anti-Christian by any means. I believe it's ingrained in us, and I don't like to speak out against it overall. But for me, it's just even the fact that the story itself is fairly unconvincing and unmoving, and there's nothing in it. I haven't read any philosophy in
the weaponized universalism, sir, is by design. I guarantee you. The whole
no, it is.
universal
I know.
salvation of the soul
I know.
is by design. Yes.
Well, sort of. I mean, it's very ancient. It's authentically ancient. So by design, maybe. I don't know. I don't think I wouldn't.
As a means of proselytization and propagation of mind virus properties, sir.
Surely, yes, but I'm not sure I would give it that much of a conspiratorial attribute so much. But I do just think the story itself in there is unconvincing. I've never understood what people found profound about it, to be honest, even when I've tried to be and wanted to be. And I am morally Christian in many ways, obviously, still, and was raised to be Catholic. But
there is one very positive matter concerning Christians, by the way, sir, and that is that some of them have elevated discernment to ontological evils, right? So if there is one thing that Christendom can have amplified and optimized about it, it's, discern maximally, competently ontological evils and protect yourself, your family, and your bloodline from them. If Christianity achieves that, then that's the bare minimum that I want from it as an ideological body of work.
Yeah.
I think too that I know what you're saying about the idea of to always turn the other cheek, to always forgive your enemies and such. And it's a very of mentality to have when you are always in when you are always when you are always and only doing that.
Sorry, madam.
Okay. Yeah, it's like I said, it's very weak and cowardly when that's the only thing that you ever do, being a complete pacifist. But I think maybe this is where people kind of twist it around. I think people use it now as an excuse to not pick a fight, to not stand up for themselves. Whereas maybe
what really makes me sick? Let me interject. Let me just say this. The thing that really makes me sick, people crying over the forgiving people for having murdered their kids and running up to them at their trial and like, I forgive you, and crying and hugging them. That really makes me sick. I want to say that. Sorry.
Yes, it's an inversion of normal, ethical, reciprocal, retributive justice. It's also counter-revolutionary optimization, because if you don't give a shit about your progeny dying, you're going to be dead as a bloodline, right? Mm-hmm. So it's counter-intuitive from an evolutionary biological perspective, right?
Yes, but let her finish her thought there. I cut her off. I didn't mean to. I had to say that, otherwise I'd forget it.
Oh, yeah. No, I do agree. So you have that side, but I think too, I think its root is found in being flexible, being plastic in a way, by adapting to your environment, because, sometimes, people, they're just not in a position of power, to be able to control the things in their life. And sometimes you just have to, let things go, no matter how bitter that they are. But it doesn't mean
the case for discretion is the better part of valor, right?
Let me finish what I'm saying. But that's not meaning, that one should just entirely give up. They can still be strategizing. They can still hold true to their own virtue. But sometimes there are things in our life that are just simply out of our control. Like with what Brendan had said. Parents, whose children, they were murdered by so and so, and they go up crying to them. You can't take back the past. What's done is done, but Basically, that in a way, accepting the reality, that's a form of survival, because if you dwell on that day and night, it's going to be counterproductive. It's going to be counterintuitive, and that's not healthy. So it's really important to accept things. Sometimes, you just have to grit your teeth and turn the other cheek, but not in every case. And I think that's where a lot of Christians misunderstand this. To turn the other cheek does not mean being good. In fact, in a lot of scenarios, it can mean doing evil.
I can think of times.
I
There's very
haven't
few
heard that
times.
take prior. Is that from a Gnostic archive or something?
What is what? What?
Turning the other cheek can sometimes allude to it being acceptable to do evil deeds in Christendom. If I heard that accurately, is that from a Gnostic archive?
I don't know. I don't know much about Gnosticism.
It seems pretty bullshit to me. Gnosticism, whenever
Weaponized arm of Christianity and the intelligentsia of its time, madam.
No, it's pretty much anti-Christian. It's sort of that the God is that this world is evil, the demiurge, basically that Satan rules this world entirely.
Unfortunately, however, sir, they were also the authors of the Rosicrucian Freemasons, sir.
Okay, right.
They were quite prominent authors of Gnostic materials, and they collaborated. I think it's called with the Theosophy Society, right? And they produced quite a lot of literature, but the Freemasons of the Rosy Cross were all about, we're okay with Christianity and alchemical analysis - Gnostic intel authorship, right? So it's a weird one.
It is, but overall, it's sort of not It's Christian in that it has the Abrahamic pantheon behind it. And Jesus is involved in all this, but it's sort of that the demiurge is the evil at work in the world, and basically the entire world is evil and must be rejected, kind of. And it's weird that way. So everything's very negative for them. I mean, I don't get it. It sounds really like a really difficult.
Would you say, sir, that it has certain Talmudic elements?
Well, everything that's Abrahamic has a little bit, doesn't it? Certain.
Would you say that Gnostic archives may or may not have influence from the Sefer Yetzirah, sir?
From the what? Say it again. I don't know what you're saying.
From the Sefer Yetzirah, sir.
What's that? What is that? I don't know what that is. Presley, do you know? What's he talking about?
I don't know.
We don't know what you're talking about.
You broke up briefly a moment, sir. Were you asking what's that? Oh, it's a Gnostic intel book. It's studied as a compendium archive to the Tree of Death, Qliphothic Kabbalah, and the Talmuds. Basically, Jewish mysticism, psychobabblery, but taken to a very serious pseudoscientific standard. So the Gnostic art books, right? They were doing drawings with geometers, or is the term geometricians, pardon, astrologers, Talmudists, the priestly class, etc. So the idea is that the Gnostics had access to all aspects of the priestly class, be it Christian, be it merchant class, etc. Right?
Right. Well, I mean, I believe there's certain, like, say, the Kabbalah has certain interesting and classical elements to it that certainly the wizard we talked to, Presley, there a couple weeks ago would be interested in that. And I do think I've read some Egyptian magic that would involve and combine Egyptian, Greek, Roman, and Jewish magic together. So there's an ancient element to Judaism that we needn't, despise. It's only in their modern, difficult incarnation where they're vying to control the entire world that they're because of a difficult force that we must. They are an ancient
the number psychobabblery, by the way, sir, is very crazy.
What's crazy? What?
The number psychobabblery, sir.
Oh, yeah.
As in they have number-related associations everywhere, and
Well, so does everybody,
it's
right?
really
3 and
quite
9 are holy
profound
numbers.
to notice patterns of. Yes, it's interesting to notice patterns of what's they called? Loose association, delusional genetic schizophrenia among the priestly class that authored the aforementioned works that we are presently referencing, sir. You can notice in their authorship trends and tendencies of loose association, delusional schizophrenia, right? And there are multiple medical journals that talk about how you can notice patterns of the crazy, grounded crazy, right, in their authored materials. So I like to read holy scriptures with the little lens of notice the schizobabblery, and try to discern how exactly inbred the priest who wrote it was. So
It's putting quality to quantity. Maybe numbers are their forte, and they're putting meaning to numbers. And like what Brendan was saying, it's a lot of cultures did that. A lot of peoples did that. So I think that maybe we can. Oh, he went off.
Perhaps he'll return.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe there can be a fine line drawn between what is obsessional and or obsessive and what is still logical. Like it can still make some kind of coherent sense, and when you make coherent sense, and you have the spiritual, the imaginative, the creative. It creates a sort of beauty about it.
We are miles off the topic, though. Although maybe the topic can only go so far. I only intended it to be a sort of briefy monologue thing anyway, so maybe I shouldn't complain that we're so far off it. One thing I did want to say is about the Longhouse guy. The guy I mentioned who brought the Longhouse. I ended up being quite friendly with him in the end, and saying, we sort of said, okay, we agreed, like, he's not going to spam me with this particular topic any longer, and we didn't like unfollow each other or get negative or fight. But it was an example where I had to defend my original idea and not let him divert it into this other thing. And but that is a good example of what I mean by epistemological pollution, and that's just someone trying to covertly divert things their own. I don't believe he meant to. He thought I was probably talking about his fucking Longhouse thing. And assumed I was like fully on board with whatever he was talking about. I mean, there's a lot of that inadvertent kind of stuff as well, in terms of this thing I'm talking about. But I had some kind of point with that. I lost it.
I'm just gonna
a recap, perhaps, of the different types of epistemological pollution: linguistic, AI, academic via blackmail, and history. Those are the ones that I would. Is that 5? No, it's 4. Linguistic, AI, academic - scholarly, and history. Right? Those are places where you can definitely see epistemological corruption, as in a corruption of the way that they do things, financial blackmail, writing and authoring what they want to know, rewriting blacks as kings and queens in English history, as an example of epistemological corruption in history to push a narrative. Any profession that can be blackmailed with money is and will be blackmailed by money by design, and it is our duty to notice the patterns of predatory evil bullshit, then to train others to notice them, and to, while doing this, humiliate them for trying to peddle to us predatory evil bullshit and take us for suckers. That's the answer and solution to the political questions.
In terms of money, because that brings that in terms of somebody I was bringing up earlier that was diverting and epistemologically polluting say the Twitter space. Again, Twitter is a unique space for the reason that you cannot delete comments yourself, people that comment on your thing. So you're stuck with them.
Right.
In that sense, it's very easy for someone to pollute your idea. So, but there was people that were notoriously doing this, that still will continue to do this, who had money. And I know people who got involved with them because they put on things like an art prize and things like this and offered money for it. And absolutely, that was a major draw for a lot of people in terms of, you're absolutely right, in terms of money.
Money is a very good persuader, sir.
It is indeed. And it's a sign, probably, of watch out.
It's not as big a persuader as not wanting to sell your soul to people who peddle predatory evil bullshit, because the price of the soul should be superior to the price of the paycheck to peddle bullshit, right? As in intellectual, scholarly, academic integrity does matter to the people that it matters to, although their numbers are dwindling due to money in the domain. If you get money, you're going to say what you're getting paid to say, unless you want to lose your money. And how many people in the scholarly academic scene are okay with losing their cushy tenures? And that is why the academic world is infested with epistemological corruption across multiple fields. But as I mentioned before, I want the audience to remember that specifically in the fields of linguistic, AI, academic, and history, you can notice epistemological corruption easily if you know what you're looking for, right?
Yes, and generally you can. I believe there's an air of fakeness about things. Anybody, even these people I'm talking about and others, you can sense the fakeness generally. I'm not, but though, I mean, I can, and maybe we can, but I don't know. Many people can't, I guess.
That's okay. They'll learn over time to notice predatory evil bullshit when it's bitten them in the ass a few times. For example, if you lose your PayPal from an email saying, "Oh, please never do business with PayPal. We're the Luxembourg HQ of PayPal. Please never do business with us. K, thanks." You know that you rustled someone's fucking jimmies. So we rustled the jimmies for fun. It has happened to me personally, so I'm too fucking high profile to not be banned by PayPal, but it's okay, sir. It's all right. That's what you get for speaking the truth and spiting the devil, but here we are, and there it is.
ML Wiz says, if you're a researcher and your funding dries up, you're cooked. Fair point, yes. It's like, I saw, what's his name, Jordan Peterson today was fighting against, who is he, Nick Fuentes. You can say whatever, Nick Fuentes is... He's got his problems.
That's something that's watchable.
Yeah, it is watchable. Exactly. Yeah, but he's at least Fuentes, for all his problems. At least I don't think he's not pretending to be something he's not, or he's not faking.
Some crispy circus bread, sir.
Yeah, but yeah, crispy circus bread. But then, so he said, Peterson, you're a crybaby, because Peterson was complaining about him talking about a certain group, obviously, and he said, but you're bought and sold by Ben Shapiro, basically. You've sold your soul to Ben Shapiro for a paycheck, for money. And he's right. I mean, the guy, he did, really. I'm sure that's a good assessment of what happened to that guy.
Yeah, you don't get to maintain moral, intellectual, and academic integrity if you sell your soul for 30 shekels, and it's very obvious and discernible to everyone who pays attention to the patterns.
Yes.
I think, too, though, that it's really important to really choose your enemy wisely. And what I mean by this is, all the petty haters, all the people that they're just being goblin-like, they're not your real enemies. They're there to annoy you. They're there to be parasitical. But, your real enemy, I think, should be someone or something that you would be proud of to defeat. Something. This is what Nietzsche was talking about, and I thought about this, and I think that it would help to weed out putting our time towards these goblin-like people, whether it's online or it's in the everyday. Stop putting our time towards them and put our time towards a real cause, towards what our virtue is. And
Well, the everyday,
I think,
the everyday is a different matter. The everyday, we must discern these things. Like originally, early on in this video, when I was on my own, I said that social media should be renamed from this cutesy sounding thing to like what it really is, which is something beyond what we understand it as.
Blood
Like
Sports Deathmatch Coliseum 9000, sir.
but like a matrix of people around the world and their ideas, like not just competing, but sort of interacting, influencing, fighting, everything all at once. Like it's a bizarre, crazy thing, like a network, an
Causality
unseen
sequence
information
timeline, sir.
stream thing. Yeah, whatever it is, it's like something more than it at first. It's like email. Like people don't. I still to this day in my professional life, let's say, have boomer type people. They want to meet, or they want to have a meeting or talk on the phone. Waste your time like commuting and meeting up and talking for an hour about something that could have been covered in 2 seconds in an email, literally. And they just have never quite copped on that everything was revolutionized and changed by the fact that I can type out a message and that you have a written record of what I said right in front of you without any of that bullshit. So it's like people don't understand the monumental significance of things. This is why social media sort of took over so prominently in the internet as well. The internet is this thing, but most of us are so absorbed in social media or trying to use it a certain way because it has itself become a nexus of the internet beyond just like before. It was like everyone had their own website and you would visit different sites for this and that information.
It's pretty good for an Intel relay
like
hive mind, sir. So long as you reflexively exclude and expel the crazy. Otherwise, you might get infected with the crazy because, you know, it's bad.
There's bias, there's relative opinions and there's bias from all of us, but we are on our own side and we must be. And most of us on our own side, most of us from where we are from are not on their own side.
People online thinking that they can conduct predatory emotional vampirism on the likes of me and getting psychically broken for my personal amusement is so much fun, sir. When liberals spastics try to laugh me, I literally turn them into training materials, sir. It's hilarious.
Where are you online other than Telegram? Tell me. Are you on one?
I am going to be on Rumble as soon as I'm done prepping those 70 or so excerpts of the audio book. I basically need to do a brief few paragraph write-up per chapter and then upload like 50 to 80 or so chapters onto Rumble in order to get my Rumble started. There's no way in hell that I'm going to be up on YouTube, sir. I am indeed, for the most part, only on Telegram. I'm known as the Intel Director for the Reality Report and the narrator of certain very politically incorrect books. And here we are, also debanked by PayPal and acute pattern causality, awareness and discernment. My personal duty is to inform the ethnicist identitarian Britannic right wing of the causality patterns and the signals in the noise that they should be aware of. And so I tend to my duties dutifully. So that's a brief rundown concerning me. Also, the surname.
Someone has a question for you. Someone has a question for you.
Yes.
Someone has a question for you. Is he that weird Satanist that was on Jubilee?
That's hilarious. But I don't know who Jubilee is, and I'm not a Satanist.
Okay, so
I openly disavow any and all Abrahamic originated schizo-psycho-babble from inbred priesthoods. Okay, excellent. I want to make this abundantly known for the permanent rec. Okay.
Yes. Of all reasons, yes. I always forget that one. When people think...
Yes, I'm the narrator of the Reality Report and its Intel Director. I've narrated Kalergi's Practical Idealism and Easy Meat Inside Britain's Grooming Gang Scandal. I'm not going to elaborate on these matters, but I'm high profile among my own circles, and I pay attention to the signals in the noise that matter and relay them dutifully, right? So that's my background.
Yes, and you narrated my book, obviously.
And I narrated Mr. Brendan Hurd's The Decline and Fall of Western Art, which is quite competently authored, informative and insightful, a little saddening at parts once you realize the scale of the corruption of civilizational Western primacy in the arts. Highly informative and insightful and saddening. are the three emotions that I had while digesting his book. And you will learn a lot from it, as I did, should you buy it and consume it. Anyway, I'm the audiobook narrator of it. Howdy ho, here we are, and there it is.
Yes, and if you like the sound of his voice, the way he carries on, but through the lens of my complaining about civilization, then really that is the audiobook for you, because
you authored it very competently, by the way, so I'm not saying this to suck shit through a tiny hosepipe. The information in the book is very, very useful to the ethnicist identitarian groups that pay attention to what matters. And the things that you have authored in there are things that they ought to know about in their schooling of the history of Western subjugation and humiliation to forces of civilizational decay.
Well, thank you. I agree, and there's nothing quite like it.
Let's frame it that way, shall we, to be legally sound.
Yes, and it's nothing quite like it, as we're saying. If you're interested in art, and there's so many people that want to talk about art on Twitter, mostly again from these epistemologically polluting circles. To be honest, many of them want to obfuscate and take it in their own direction and ignore the real obvious plain reasons for why
intellectual coprophagia is another way to describe epistemological corruption. They feel entitled to peddle to you intellectual coprophagia and you to be gleefully happy and thankful to them for peddling it to you. So there's a degree of entitlement going on as well.
Right. Someone has a question for you. This says, "What is?" Sorry. Tyler James has a question. What is his take on people like Adam Green? Presley? What's your take on Adam Green? I personally like Adam Green.
Oh,
who is this?
No comment. I mean, I know of the name, but I don't know who he is or anything.
And neither of you know him. Okay, Adam Green actually does. He started out as sort of a general political commentator, but he's moved into the realm of. And again, I'm not anti-Christian myself, so with this, I mean, you must take this whatever way you want. I just have, I don't mind him myself. He moved into the realm of really criticizing Christianity very seriously, not as a pagan, but as someone who sees the sort of Talmudic origins of it and the subversive nature of it, as you were talking about earlier, Alexander. And
I may have missed something. He's become like a Christian now.
So he's become like a biblical scholar, basically, on the subject. He's researched it. And he can dish out knowledge. If you watch him in these debates and things, he's very, very knowledgeable. He will talk about anything from the Bible, as far as I can see, and break it apart in a critical fashion, which is, obviously very upsetting to a lot of people and whatever. But I just think, in terms of specifically what he's done, he has done a good job. And, it's enlightening in this way, even if you are a Christian, to sort of see, a critical perspective.
The political sociodynamics of the time that informed the authorship of the Bible, sir. Things along those lines.
Well, just everything, like the parts of it that don't make sense, and there's vastly more than even I was aware of. Like, I don't know.
I don't mind the study of apocryphal literature, but when it comes to the normalization of universalist ethics and universal salvation, I don't like that because it is not pro-in-group. It's creating an outgroup.
The same guy says he is pagan now, so he is pagan. Okay, I didn't know that. And his he's saying he is pagan. All right. I didn't think he was. I believe he's sort of a deist, like Thomas Jefferson or whatever, is how I understood him to be. Which is
that's fair enough. He probably has allies among Christians and doesn't want to upset them.
No, he's very.
Intellectual honesty.
He is the most anti-Christian. He's the most anti-Christian personality on the. He definitely is against them. Yeah.
Oh, really? I see.
Yeah.
I'll have to have a look-see at his
we seemingly can't stop talking about religion. It's not really the topic, but we probably talk the topic out so we can talk about whatever the fuck we want, I guess. So, Presley, what do you think about Christianity? I don't really know. I know you don't. What do you think about it?
Well, I did grow up Christian too. Not Catholic as you were, but more so Protestant, more so Baptist. I grew up. And
Like talking tongues and all that, were they? Were your parents talking tongues
sorry,
and doing all that? Were they
no,
talking
that's
tongues? That's
no, that's
evangelical.
no,
Is it?
that's Pentecostal. Though
Oh,
my great grandmother was Pentecostal, but I never met her. But anyhow, no, the Southern Baptist religion, I'm not really sure how to describe it. Just your most basic kind of Protestantism, just very, um, I don't know. I remember as a child, I never really took interest in it, and I didn't really understand why so many people took it so seriously. And I didn't hate it as a child or anything, but you know, as an example, going to Sunday service, I wanted to jump right into Revelations. I wanted to learn about the end of the world. I was really interested in that. But the whole sermon was just basically the preacher would no first we would sing about 50 hymns and then take breaks in between
50.
of
Really?
rest,
That's a
and then
lot.
eventually get around to maybe like 2 or 3 lines of something in the Bible.
Right.
And it just I wasn't impressed by what I had seen, and just the way that it was presented to me, even at home, it wasn't in a beautiful and kind of encouraging way. And that's just something I've never wanted to have in my life since. And I don't necessarily hate it or anything, because I can see, how it can be, useful in a way. It can make one's life very, very simple and straightforward, and it can give a person a lot of peace, um, and I've even considered that myself. But at the same time, I'm thinking, but I don't feel it in my heart. And that's the problem. I have to feel it in my heart um, in order to adopt it. And it's just something that it's not even aesthetically pleasing to me. Though I do like their art, well, Catholic artwork, and their architecture. I love that, and I love the feeling of being inside of a cathedral. It's just it makes you feel really good compared to a Protestant church where the ceiling it's very flat. It's like you're in a box, and it feels very stagnant. And and then the
Interesting. Yeah.
question presents too, well, why don't I become Catholic? And I have considered that, but again, it does not sit right with me, and especially with what's all going on with the Vatican, and with the bishops and such. I don't want to be supporting something like that.
It's
So
interesting. It's interesting to me. I just cannot summon a belief in the story itself. I really just don't believe it, and I couldn't just make myself believe it, even to feel good or for any other reason.
and
You know,
really too, what I've seen with the stories in the Bible, they're old stories. They come directly from ancient myths. They're just told in a different style.
well, like
So instead,
I
well,
mean the story of not so much the Old Testament, which is more like a you can say it's foreign and not us. It's basically a pagan myth, like the other pagan myths, but is obviously Jewish, right? And that's the one but the physical story of Jesus and what happened and the whole thing with the whole story, I've never found it, moving or believable.
What seems believable to me is that if you wanted to control a population, give them hope for a better afterlife than the present and tell them to be obedient. If I was the priestly class, I would want obedient and productive citizens and slaves. And
Well, the threat
so
of
I
hell,
would
the threat
teach
of hell is
them
even more of
I
a
would teach them to love their slavery. I would teach them
yeah.
to love their captors. I would teach them to be subservient and turn the other cheek when they are beaten, and to turn the other cheek, not because it is ethically sound, but it is a humiliation ritual. So if you view Christendom from the lens of it is written as a subjugation and humiliation ritual manual, right, you begin to see it very, very differently. But that's my take on the matter. I refuse to be subject to the humiliation rituals of its authors. Also, universalist ethics are counter to in-group preference, because you believe that your out-group is your in-group when it's not. So Christianity creates a form of mass universalism that excludes the interests of the citizenry and ethnos that it's either proselytized upon or imposed upon with violence and blood shed. Pardon. So I'm very skeptical about anyone peddling to me superior spiritual comprehension of, the cosmos and the world, especially if it comes from the Middle East or the East Asiatics, etc., because I don't trust them as spiritual thought leaders. I think of them as good herders of subsentient slave chattel tax animals. That's how they would perceive themselves when writing and authoring their scripts. But I do not wish to be a subservient and happy tax chattel who is fond of humiliation rituals and so forth, right? So I'm not very fond of Christendom or any Abrahamic religions for that matter, because they are, as far as I can see from my studies of all of them, they are designed as a subjugation and humiliation ritual by the priestly class, who are instructed by divine right to rule over the non-priestly class because they don't have the faculties to rule over themselves, right? So
Yes.
the priestly class wants control and wants obedient, productive citizenry, and so they give them a religion that is best suited and adaptive to their needs to become and be conditioned to be slave tax chattel citizenry and obedient and submissive, right?
I think
So
it is.
that's how
I think for a long time, people are genetically slaves. This is my problem with the normal, is that they're genetically a slave class, probably. But someone
I
says
think
here,
they catch on to bullshit when it harms them, though, very quickly. Nature wins in the end is a very broad and ephemeral concept, right? But in this specific case scenario, everyone doesn't like being taken for a sucker, right? And so when people notice patterns of them being taken for suckers, eventually they catch on, right? Even the normals, with their limited capacity for discernment and judgment, they can notice over time. The more
I don't think
brazen,
they will. I don't think noticing anything will affect them at all. I just think if anything changes their mind about anything, it'll be
you
pain.
are pessimistic about their discernment.
No,
This never becomes mainstream.
They will catch on, but only because they're feeling physical privation and pain, and they're losing. They've lost some comfort. That is what will change them. But someone makes a comment here. Tyler James says, "How can he appreciate Western art without appreciating Western ethic and mythology?" So I don't know if you mean me or Alex, but Alex only narrated my book, which is, so the sentiment expressed is mine. And if you mean how can I appreciate Western ethic and mythology without a profound belief in the Jesus story, then I can only say that you must be an American. This is a perfect example of epistemological pollution, and I know you don't mean it because you're following us and you've otherwise been I was going to say loyal commenter, but someone who agrees with what we're saying. But I don't think that's a crucial part of it. Usually, again, it's Americans very often who cannot separate the West from Christianity, Western ethics and Western philosophy or anything, when really the origin of Western philosophy and ethics is in the Greek, I think, maybe even the Egyptian. It goes further back than Christianity. It always did. And all I have to do is bring up Greece and Rome. Like, do you consider a Roman statue a Western piece of art? And right away, your argument is dispelled because it goes back, it predates Christianity. So I don't need to be an ardent Christian to.
I think it's important to provide detailed and wholesome answers to any kind of inquiries that are provided. because even if they seem fairly basic to people that study causality patterns of the mythopoetic body of the West, in terms of its civilization, history, aesthetics, etc., answering very basic questions very thoroughly and as detailed as possible is very good, because people get to know exactly the details of the matter, and so there's good and competent intel relay, right?
He
Anyway,
says,
if
yeah.
there are any questions,
Christianity is
by the
part.
way,
What's that?
go ahead.
He says Christianity is part of the canon. So yes, I acknowledge that and admit that and say that all the time, as well. And that I am Catholic, culturally Catholic, even regardless of what I think otherwise. So, yeah, Presley, give us some comments, and I think we're going to shut it down pretty quick here, because we're going on like 3 hours, and I have to get inside.
Yeah. I'm just going to say that really, I think the solution is pretty simple. I don't, it might be okay, every now and then, just for some comedy in one's life, to look at these people or those people, reacting, and that's what we were saying earlier. But that keep on talking about the same issue, the same peoples, downing Christianity or the Abrahamic faiths, or whatever peoples or religions it may be. Yeah, we're all aware of that issue, but what I see a lot in the alt-right is people just reiterating this over and over and over again. It's not going to change anything the more that you talk about it. But what is going to change something is when you create something. And what changes the minds of the people? Stories. So people, they'll understand things more when they have a good analogy, through some TV show or book or, a video game. Oh yeah, this situation here, at work or something, it's just like in this movie. Yeah, I can kind of understand it, and or and so forth. So they'll remember stories much more so, kind of like Aesop's fables. So that's where it needs to be directed, is in a more creative route. Yeah, they can talk all this rubbish and everything. Well, let them. Don't pay attention to them. I guess what I'm saying is that our attention shouldn't be consumed by them. Focus on actually, putting something out in the world that is above even all their, I don't know what to call it,
Alexander would call it, what's your term? Fake evil bullshit. Or
Intellectual detritus.
Yes,
that
exactly.
They feel entitled for us to consume.
Yes,
Right.
exactly. Don't pay attention to that. Let them, because they're not going to stop, so why bother? And what would make them even more angry is by not reacting to them, by putting all of your energy into something, that you create that's beautiful and that, just blows them away. So it just...
May I offer a counter of, can we meme them until they cry and psychically break them, but trying to destroy Western civilization? Yesterday, by the way.
Someone said,
I
okay,
don't
let me just
know.
read a couple. Okay, sorry. Or go on. Sorry, I didn't mean to say.
Oh, well, I'm just gonna say I don't know. Yeah, I do enjoy good memes. I have a lot of them, but I don't think that
We
our
should
creative
collectively
potential
laugh,
should be
but-
spent primarily
Mhm.
on that, is what I'm saying.
I think
good to
anyone
have
who
some
wants
laughs.
to peddle evil bullshit, right, should be laughed at, right? As in, anyone who feels entitled to peddle to me evil bullshit, I'm not just going to dismiss it. I'm going to point at and laugh at them for feeling entitled to peddle to me evil bullshit and expecting me to consume it, right? So I see it as a very simple deductive process, maybe because I'm a little more disagreeable, but in general, anyone who wants to peddle to you evil bullshit, you should make a meme out of them, because it is a meme, because they're trying to have you engage in intellectual coprophagia, right? So let them know that they're peddling bullshit, and to try harder and make a meme out of it. Oh, please do better, I'm bored. Right, like at this point, okay, in terms of world geopolitics, we're at the stage of, okay, please do better, I'm bored.
Okay, so there's someone making comments here that is a perfect example of what the point of this originally was, which is epistemological pollution, and that he's sort of inserting his own ideas, and it's not like he can convert or change what I was saying, but he's kind of sort of he's not doing it on purpose in a sort of sly way like some of the other nefarious characters I was mentioning before, but he is kind of polluting them. Let me just read them out, and I don't mean to mock you or diss you or anything there, Tyler James. I just want to point out how. So he says, archetypes, ego death, Christ being the man who had no ego. Now, you're very much inserting in here a postulation of a concept.
I don't have the comment section open, so what are you reading exactly?
He's defending. This is the guy that's defending Christianity and saying, how can you be a positive Western influence without Christianity? How can you be basically not Christian and be pro-Western? So he's saying, and so this is his comment: archetypes, ego death, Christ being the man who had no ego. So even there, though, you're making a postulation of a concept. This is I found this very much with that when I had this talk with that Arval guy. People who are really want to excuse Christianity in a philosophical way, in a rational way, invent these comments. It's like modern art. The modern art excuses, Alexander, you can appreciate as narrator of my book. It's this flowery language stuff that makes no sense, that is not inherent in the work, that just sort of makes a creative excuse for it. So, archetypes, ego death, Christ being the man who had no ego. So you can say that fine, because the text is so limited about what happened and what he did and what he said, and that it represents the ego death, and you're trying to relate it to Jung or something. That's a fine postulation to make, but there's no credibility, there's no direct link. It's just like your personal opinion. And
interesting, sir. May
I
briefly offer
telling what we're saying a little bit
May I briefly offer a summary that it is May I briefly offer a summary that it is slave ethics to assert to someone that they should turn the other cheek? It is literally conditioning and training them to be obedient, servile slave chattel. By the way, and the person who is telling you that they're literally telling you to be obedient slave chattel is the bad guy as well, right? Because they're trying to decondition you from literal Talmudic brainwashing. It's a problem. We need to be able to recognize patterns of brainwashing, especially if they teach people to be eternal victims and to be happy in a state of subjugation. Okay. Nietzsche, by the way, talks quite a bit about slave morality in Twilight of the Idols. And so it's interesting to note that if you teach people to be happy in their status of slavery, and to tell others that it's okay to be happy in this as a slave to, the Christian God, to an eternal afterlife if you're obedient to the doctrines of Christendom, or an eternal ceaseless punishment if you disobey. This kind of blackmail, emotional blackmail, mafia boss type reasoning doesn't sit well with people who understand how this works. It's a form of spiritual, emotional blackmail into servitude. By the way, the ethics of turn the other cheek are the ethics of enslavement, of cognitive enslavement of the slave chattel that they are trying to enslave, right? So be very wary of anyone who tells you, do not seek justice for yourself, allow yourself to be a victim. those are the ethics of turn the other cheek with Christianity. I don't know how we got to this point, but this is a very important point that I have to make about Christendom, right? Why I don't like the ethics of it, right?
Right.
The ethics of turn the other cheek are be a slave and be happy about it, and I don't like it.
And to be a victim too, as long as you're the victim, then you're deemed as being the
normalizes
winner, and be martyred.
And it glorifies it. It's not only normalizing you to be a victim, it's glorifying it even, right? That's the sadistic humiliation ritual part of it.
Yeah, well, the forgiveness thing, is sickening. And I recently made a post with like some one of the worst things about those, like say one of the funerals of the I think it was in Germany, Austria, or something like that. Some guy had his daughter, I think, raped and killed by an immigrant, and he showed up at his own daughter's funeral crying, saying, "I just hope it doesn't stop mass immigration." And he mentioned even the wide range of restaurants, and that was one of his fucking reasons that he listed. This normie, unthinking, at his own daughter's funeral, at the hands of such a person. And someone recently made a post about some restaurant in the UK where it was found there was fecal matter here and there, and the guy was saying, "Well, it's part of my culture." Defending himself by saying, "It's my religion, my culture to wipe my ass with my hand," and this is the reason. And you cannot prosecute me for this because it's my culture. And I was like, "Is this one of the wide range of restaurants people are crying about
in Richmond?"
For fuck's sake, like in every way, a fucking failure across the board. Like that is an epistemological failure where you've been muddied and confused by comments and ideas from other people to the point that you don't know up from down. And with a normal who only works on impressions and loves
to glorify being dirty, basically. That it's not only glorifying being the victim, but glorifying being dirty, because that's that's getting down to the roots. That's the pure way. That's primal, and it's disgusting. It's they don't really understand that.
The words you're looking for are aristocratic and heroic idealism. Christendom venerates the idea of bearing the burden of doing something as much as possible with dignity and hope for a better life in the afterlife. It does not have heroic idealism and aristocratic idealism, right? Whereas you will find quite a lot of heroic and aristocratic idealism in Greek, Nordic, and Zoroastrian texts. Right. So, it's interesting. If you wanted to sculpt and mold people to be perfect slave chattel, would you teach them to be servile and obedient in this life in order to hope for a better afterlife? Probably. Would you want to increase your herd size by telling them, everyone's soul can be saved, just come join us and be obedient? Right. So when we talk about the proliferation of cognitive mind viruses that mentally enslave people, the priesthood that wrote them, they knew exactly what they were doing. And they also knew exactly how far they could get by deceiving gullible fools. And so here we are, and there it is.
It's quite genius, too.
It's quite genius in terms of subjugating a civilization to turn them into servile slave, tax, chattel, right? So it served its purpose.
The genius of Christianity was in the bilateral, but the bifurcation of good and evil into very strongly this or that. And if you break the laws, you will go to hell. You'll be tortured forever, or you'll reach paradise. And that, it's such a simple trick, I guess.
Obedience or eternal torture. What would you prefer?
Tyler James, let me just say, Tyler James is depending on what he says. I'm not saying that because I mentioned him before as committing an act of what do I call it again? What's the name of this video?
Epistemological pollution.
Yes, right. Thank you. Epistemological pollution. Yes. And so he's saying, I'm not saying that it's a Jungian idea, but I don't mean to pick on you, Tyler James. It's just that was an example of sort of sullying my message. Inadvertently, at least. And Joel Kemp says Plato was proto-Christian in some ways after the fact. Well, you can say that it's only because Christianity, the good parts of Christianity, are Neoplatonist. It's not in the reverse where Plato was a Christian. I'm afraid. And Immortal Rising Comics says Christianity's afterlife is the promise of the preservation of the person's ego, which is interesting. Yes, that's true. That's what they claim, which seems like pretty inconceivable and crazy, where something like reincarnation does like make a lot more sense. So that probably explains Presley's leap into Hare Krishna right there. No? Did you feel it was a rational religious was there any reason like that involved where you it made more
I mean,
sense
it wasn't any surrendering of one's ego. It wasn't Christian, like that or anything. You're being servile. I mean, yeah, maybe some are, of course, but I'm a very independent thinker, and there came a point in time when there wasn't enough room in it for my own independent thinking. So I love that. But that's not to say either that I've left Radha and Krishna. And I pray to communicate with several different gods. So I did get something out of it, I'd say. But, I know you have to get off, but this actually leads quite well. Our discussion leads quite well into possible live stream that we're going to do on cults.
Oh yeah, so, it does. In fact, we spent most of this live stream not talking about what we are supposed to be talking about.
What I find interesting about cults, by the way, is the tools of cognitive enslavement. That's the really interesting part about cults, right? So the weaponized tools to brainwash people are very interesting because...
And among them is epistemological pollution. Among the tools is... I'm just bringing up the topic again. Sorry.
Yes, sir. When it comes to the nature and understanding of the causality patterns of the world, religion posits and offers its own takes, and that is a form of pollution in and of itself. For example, we're not on the back of a turtle faring through space. And the various creation myths that are completely wacko cray-cray, we can obviously affirm that they are indeed wacko cray-cray, right? So when it comes to epistemological pollution of and by religion, specifically in terms of the creation of the universe, etc., and the reasons that they posit, right, that can be considered a form of epistemological pollution because it pollutes the ability to understand something if you already have a wrong answer for it, right? So you can't come to new or correct understandings about the nature of reality and the causality patterns of it if you believe that X, Y, Z are correct, which are obviously not. That is the form of epistemological corruption on the nature of reality that religion does, by the way, right? So we've covered epistemological corruption in religion, history, language, AI, and there's one more that I don't recall presently.
Here's some epistemological pollution for you. Someone says that Alexander's accent is fake. Someone's claiming that your accent is fake and you're not English. Sounds like a fake English accent to me. I'm from England. Bring me up. What's your...
My retort to this is I have always had this accent and I'm not putting it on. And anyone who knows me knows that I am not putting it on. I have had a beer, by the way, but I guarantee you that there is no performance of sorts or lying or posturing or bullshitting to the audience, because not being forthright to people is blackening to the soul. for lack of better words. Lying to people and not being forthright with them stains the character. So I don't do that, would be my answer to him. There is no faking the accent, and I don't mind the question.
No, he's persisting in this, and I think this is a good example of epistemological pollution. He is doing this on purpose. Okay, he says, "What part of the UK, if you don't mind me asking?" I'm from London.
I am from the very south of the United Kingdom. Originally, I'm from East London, Canning Town, and my family clans are the Baker and Cook clans of East London. However, I grew up in Kent. I'm not going to tell you exactly where, but it's Kent. And my family have 4+ generations of tobacco and sugar plantations in East India. And communists want my head on a pike because of it. So, here we are and there it is. If there are any questions, I don't mind answering them forthrightly and honestly.
Okay, yeah, so we won't listen to him anymore, because this is, again, where it enters the realm of, is this a fake actor, or what's his fucking story? And how can we know?
Yes, absolutely. If people want to know who the hell is speaking and why and what's his gist and identity, etc., I'm the narrator and intel director for the Reality Report, independent media group. If you want to have a gander at what I and mine do, we're on Telegram, t.me/the Reality Report. Have a gander there. We tend to discerning the patterns and signals in the noise for the collective ethnicist identitarians of the Anglosphere, and we tend to our duty competently. Imagine, if you will, that one man knows how to conduct the operations of an intel operative, but doesn't do it for glow-ho. That's me. Howdy ho. Intel director of the Reality Report and narrator of some fairly spicy audiobooks. Howdy ho.
Yes, very good. So that's Alexander, and Presley, what do you want to give something about yourself, I guess, or whatever, and then we'll shut it down.
Yeah, I'm usually not very good about these things, but you may find me on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, Substack especially. I write a novel. I have up 5 videos on my YouTube, just narrations of some of my chapters that I have so far. I'm currently at about 20,000 words in my novel, so I still have a bit of ways to go. It's a sci-fi dystopian novel, and very spiritual, psychological, philosophical. So be on the lookout for that. I plan to try to have it done up, or at least fully written, by the end of the year. And I'm always looking for publishers. So if you are a publisher or know of a good publisher, just send me a message. And I can't think of anything else really. Occasionally I'll do dream interpretation videos, or every once in a while I might write in just a short essay just on my recent thoughts. But that's that.
So there you go, kids. That's the epistemological pollution. And that is the end.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.